a formal meeting, but I think there is still value in following up on some of the conversation points, at least with those of us that are here.
Mm-hmm.
Is everyone all right with that?
Yeah. Yes, that sounds good.
Okay. And I know we do have a couple guests on the line, so just in the interest of since we're a small group, knowing who's with us, if anyone wants to introduce themselves before we move into our conversation.
Hi, my phone number is the one that ends in 6422. This is Councilwoman Socorro Ludwig.
Welcome, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
Glad you joined us tonight.
Hey, Suzanne.
Hi.
Hi, Denise. Hi, Josh.
So glad you can join us. It's really fun to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm interested to hear what's going on with everything too.
I know we have.
Hey.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. And then I'm Victoria. I'm from CoLab Arts, and so I'm just hearing what you guys are up to.
Very good. Welcome.
Hi, Victoria.
Hi, thank you.
And then I know we have. Oh, go ahead. Yes, please.
Hey, Charlie.
Thank you. This is the best ratio of guests to commission members we've had in years.
Almost outnumbering us.
But in any case, thank you all for joining us. So because we don't have quorum, we'll skip approval of our last minutes. And we have one main topic of discussion tonight, which has been also a focal point of our discussions for the past several months, which is our park assessment, park system assessment. So over the last several months, as commission members, we have been conducting sort of quick, rapid assessments of conditions in our parks using an adapted version of the tool that was created by the Trust for Public Land back when they did the New Brunswick Parks Action Plan in 2018 and first used that assessment tool. So we adapted and updated that tool to go back and do sort of a quick check on how things are looking in our parks, particularly across a number of features and categories. It's kind of ranking them on a 1 to 5 scale in terms of their conditions. So what I'm going to share, and this is, let's see, this is, I put together a summary so we can more easily see the results of that, both per park. And then I also summarized the across the different parks, right, where there were common features that were rated, kind of averaging those two. So let me just pull it up. And I guess those 10 minutes that we were waiting, I could have pulled it up already, but who thinks of these things at the time? All right. Okay, so folks can see that, I think. So you can see on the left is where the average score of each of the parks. I believe we got to all of them. I think the only one that didn't wasn't evaluated was Monument Square Park. I believe we did get to all of the rest. And you see, I just sorted them from the highest average score to the lowest. On the right side are all those elements that were in the survey to be assessed. So you can see the average score, and then on the right is the number of parks that were evaluated that had that element, right? So obviously not all parks have all of these elements. In fact, a few elements, only 1 or 2 parks have them, but that's factored into the scoring, right? Only averaging out those parks where it was scored. So we started discussing this a little bit last week, but I thought it'd be helpful to take one final look at it because it's a little clearer in this summary. You can see I just kind of color coded on both sides, green to highlight those where the scores were strongest, right? Above an average of 4, and coded as red those that were lower, below an average of 3, right? So if we look at the left, the parks, right, the strongest being Boyd and Feaster Park, a whole bunch kind of clumped together in the middle, and then the ones with the lowest average score, in reverse order: Pittman, Joyce Kilmer, Welton Street, Kossuth next after that. So I think those scores reflect some of the summaries that commission members shared last time in terms of the reports on their visits to the parks. And then on the right, again, I think we can see a little more clearly now some of the things that we started noticing in our discussion, that some of the strongest, right? We have some of the strongest scores are maybe features that are unique to one or a handful of parks, right? That maybe are stick out in a good way, right? Community gardens, skate park, dog park, boat launch, splash pads, amphitheaters, monuments, memorials, people liking trees in our parks, right? And some of those that were more likely to be to have lower scores: baseball and soccer fields, which are in 5 of the parks, bathroom buildings, drinking fountains, which we discussed a little, and then 2 kind of overlapping, which was horticultural demonstration gardens and just planted areas generally, right? So just looking at this now, I'm curious if there are any kind of any additional reactions, responses just based on this, and then we can talk a little bit about kind of how we summarize this for communication to the mayor's office and Parks Department.
Charles, I didn't look at this before just now, and I'm wondering if there is a grouping or an ability to group some of these things by like physical. Is everything physical, or is there anything that is like activity based, or like the vandalism, graffiti? I see some of that down at the bottom. But is most of it things that we could have an impact on because it is an investment or upgrade?
Yeah, I think, I think looking at some of these, for example, some of them are things that could be addressed with, a one-time capital investment. For example, drinking fountains, I think about as something that, if the city could decide, and we might want to recommend that, all the outdated, decrepit, or, just non-functional water fountains be removed and replaced with newer water fountains. Like, for example, you see at Feaster Park where there's a traditional water fountain next to, a bottle refill, right? Which I think these days is, really much more attractive. So that could be an example of a specific kind of capital improvement that across multiple parks that we could suggest, right? Some of the others I think are more kind of capacity and maintenance questions, right? Bathroom buildings, we talked a little bit about that last time, that just at many parks, right, they're not open, or when they, the problem is when they're open, they're not taken care of well, or magnets for unsavory activities. So, that might be a tough one to fully resolve. But, just for example, maybe the suggestion could be, could the park rangers now active, could the city prioritize, at least on busy summer weekends, opening those bathrooms on weekends, for example, and monitoring them on weekends? That's just an example, right? To answer that question. But I think, it depends a little on the nature of the element or concern. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And
Hi,
I see.
everyone.
Hi, Claudia. Welcome.
Okay, so do we have a quorum now?
We do have a quorum, so we may pause in our conversation, since you're here, to approve the minutes.
Yeah.
And thank you, Josh, for taking on the minutes. Denise and Josh, want to say anything about the minutes before we present them for a vote?
I'm good. I have no feedback. Anything? Did you get any feedback?
No, pretty simple summary of just what we talked about each of the parks. There wasn't really much to, and then we talked a little bit about the park and potentially using a translation, I believe, for Spanish translations to better serve the community.
Right.
And that was pretty much that update
Okay.
on that, the tagging project. The potential tagging
The tree project, yeah,
Right.
tree identification.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Clara, did you get a chance to view those minutes? I know they were sent out just today.
I didn't. So
We could. They are pretty short and simple.
I'm
And
sure.
clean. So we could also just pull them up, and probably in 30 seconds, everyone could take a look at them and see if there are any questions.
If you feel it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So let me do that real quick. Okay, so they're on the screen now. We could see here, we confirmed the note taker rotation, which already has been swapped, right? So Zoltan, I believe, is in Sal's absence, doing the minutes this month, and Sal will take next month. But we don't need to change that in the minutes because that's what we discussed last time. And then we just had the summary of some of the reports on the park assessments, and the brief summary of the conversation about the Buccolo Park tree tagging, tree identification project.
They look good to me. If no one has questions, I'm happy to make a motion.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the minutes as submitted, say aye.
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 Okay, I believe that's
Okay.
anyone. No abstentions, no nays. Okay, thank you. All right, so business accomplished on the minutes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being able to jump in, Talata. And so I'll pull us back to the
Park assessment.
yes. That.
Are we thinking that we'll be asking to meet with the mayor again, as we've done in the past?
That's a good question. What do you all think? We may have discussed that previously, but not in the last month or two. We have generally tried to do that on an annual basis. So when we send this, we could accompany it with an invitation for, a meeting in, at our December or November, December meeting, or, just a separate meeting specifically around this.
And perhaps before, our goal is to really better serve the community. Maybe we could come up with some, in a prior meeting, come up with some points to discuss with the mayor. Things we
Yes.
want to do about certain parks. How do we
Mhm.
recommend certain community fixes, per se, to other parks? Like what is it really that the community wants? Maybe we can decide that in advance. Just
Yeah,
to be
no, I
very-
think as much as we can have some of that conversation tonight to sort of narrow down, okay, based, I think beyond just sending, these are the results of the surveys, translating that into these are some recommendations we would make based on these evaluations, right? So, and then, yeah, depending on when we're able to meet with the mayor, prepare a little more. I think based on, we want whatever we send as kind of the cover letter or summary to this to be the basis for, for that follow-up conversation. And welcome, Josh. I see we have Josh B joining us.
Yes, sorry everyone. I was in a meeting that went way over time, so I apologize for the being late here. But good to see you all.
Welcome.
So Josh, we're looking at, if you can see your screen, we're looking at the summary of the assessments, both on a per park basis and on a per element or per question basis.
Gotcha.
Yep. So maybe we can kind of discuss that, right? How do we want to boil this down into a set of kind of highlights or recommendations? I think it's we can obviously point out some of the strong points, but and at the same time draw attention to recommendations for where we could have improvements, and on a park by park basis, right? I think this kind of confirms what our conversations have been over the past couple of years about which parks in general need more attention. Probably one that shifted into that category over the last year is Welton Street Park. But I think Joyce Kilmer and Pittman, right, although they have particular circumstances, just drawing attention to that, maybe include Kossuth in that category as well, which hasn't received any upgrades over the past few years. So Joyce Kilmer and Pittman obviously have some of those particular circumstances as they face some vagrancy and public safety concerns that are sort of unique to those parks. But that's no reason not to highlight those as challenges that are, keeping residents from fully enjoying those parks. Any other kind of thoughts on, just what we highlight as generally, these are some priority parks that could receive additional attention, right? And doesn't necessarily need to be, grand renovations, but more attention to maintenance, perhaps some upgrades,
Mhm.
more proactivity if possible around some of those public safety concerns. Any other thoughts about how to frame kind of the priority parks?
Yes, one. So I did three, and I tried by like two more. And I think we could come up with some kind of functionality score. So just because a park looks good and there's not much technical issues, because of the number of people want to use it,
Mhm.
those little dysfunctionalities are really annoying. So I went to the youth complex,
Mhm.
and it's like 3.3 whatever. This weekend I met a ton of people, and there were not enough benches, no covered area, no nothing. So the park looked okay, that was
Mhm.
water in the water fountain, so it's not horrible,
Mhm.
but I would say that one of the parks should be improved
Mhm.
Right.
quickly, because it's a heavily used. So it's not just the quality; it's the usage per quality or whatever. That was eyesore.
Ensuring there's equitable treatment for the parks, making sure they're servicing the needs of that particular park's,
Yeah.
users,
Mhm.
so to speak. I see
So
what you're saying.
that
Right.
park had like baseball areas unused and a large soccer field
Right.
heavily used, absolutely nothing around the soccer field. So people were bringing their own chairs and foldable things, and so that was bad.
Mhm.
Right, I see what you mean. Yeah, I agree completely. I think that is definitely the best way to present it to the mayor. Like, even though we had certain findings, they're from our lens, but certainly if we could maybe present those findings with, okay, this is what it is, but maybe we discuss the current state and where we think it needs to be based on, like Zoltan said,
Mhm.
those
Mhm.
other criteria. I love that idea.
It falls
Yeah, I
in,
think that's a good point. Yeah. Go ahead, Denise. Yeah.
it falls in line with the whole environmental justice conversation that we've had in the past, and that I think is just kind of servicing in a lot of places now, making sure that all areas of the city have appropriate facilities for that neighborhood and that population. So I think that would be a good way. One of the things we might want to do is look at the two prior letters or reports that we gave to the mayor. I can't remember exactly what the format was, but we probably should look at those and pick up where we ended up. I know we talked in the last meeting about tree canopy and coverage. Josh was very helpful. Josh Best was very helpful with that conversation with the mayor. So maybe we should just look at that. And there might have been some assessments of the parks and a way that we summarize them that we could just kind of piggyback on.
Yes. The one, my one small note of caution is I also want to make sure we can present this to the mayor in a timely fashion. So I think my aim or my hope would be that based on tonight's conversation, we could draft our communication over the next couple of weeks to send prior to the next meeting, right? Prior to the next meeting. So if we can, kind of do some of that, going back to the prior to refer to that, I think incorporate that, that's valuable, right? But that would just rely on us doing a little extra homework outside of the meeting. So what I might suggest is, and Zoltan, I think your point is well taken, that we can highlight sort of generally these are 3 or 4 parks that particularly generally need more attention. But then if people want to call out kind of in individual parks that they visited, if there was 1 or 2 specific points they wanted to draw attention to, right? Being cognizant that a list of 70 recommendations might be less likely to get acted on versus a list of 25 good recommendations, right? But I think like Zoltan, I think that example, youth sports complex is heavily used, lots of features, would be greatly improved just by more benches, right? I think that's a very concrete.
And just one more thing, the changing population around that area, those Latino families brought the kids for soccer, particularly. The soccer part was the worst of the youth complex. So talking about social justice, changes in the neighborhood will change the need for certain activities, features.
I just wanted just a quick clarification. This is Josh Best. When you said the soccer utilization, were you talking about a specific evening or a day of the week that you were there?
I was there this weekend. Was that Saturday or Sunday midday? I don't remember, but it's on. I will look it up when I submit it. So it's not a daily activity. Yeah, midday.
Okay.
And both the turf and just the lack of seating areas, that was definitely the worst part and the most used. The only used actually was.
This is the youth sports complex you're talking about?
The youth complex on George Gilmer. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was there Saturday. I helped coach the soccer team. That's why I just wanted to clarify which use, because they do practices evenings like weeknights, and then Saturdays are usually the games. So I was just curious if you were there at the same time I was there. But yeah, I'm generally supportive of what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Thanks.
I think the other thing that we've talked about is that Bucklew Park has potential to have some soccer fields as well. I don't know that will dilute what's happening or expand what's happening with soccer. I know that that's very popular in town. So if it will encourage people from a different part of the city, or if it will, if it may be by age. So it would be helpful to know what the plan is for that. I know Sal has shared that before.
So this kind of leads us to another point on the other side of the ledger in terms of features, common features across the system that we want to draw attention to. Baseball and baseball softball fields were the parks that had those was generally not rated very well. I know I had a couple of those parks that had baseball and soccer fields, at least one of which at Baker is slated to be converted to a soccer field, right? But one thing, that I thought this might be a specific thing to call out is, baseball, soccer fields, even relative to other sports features, are relatively, labor and maintenance intensive, right? And right now they're generally not being kept up that they're really playable, right? So there may be, for both that reason and the fact that there's more demand for soccer fields, right? It may be in that looking where possible, where can we convert some, maybe just preserving a couple of baseball fields in key locations that that can hopefully be maintained better, so they're still there for when people want to use them. I mean, Joyce Kilmer Park, for example, still gets there's organized teams that play there still, but I happen to know, because I bumped into someone who was doing it, they pay just like someone themselves to clean up that field before they use it, right? That's the city's not doing that. So which seems like a big oversight, right? So that's just maybe an example there of where we can call out sort of something that's maybe to consider across multiple parks. Just to go back to the individual parks briefly, I think because we probably won't have time to necessarily discuss and capture points about all the parks in this one meeting. What I might do is when we draft draft the initial communication and kind of template for the mayor. I'll send that back out and then ask people individually, you know, based on the parks you visit, if you want to call out something specific to a park that you visited, we can do so and include it, right? And you know, try and do that in a concise way, but so we're not missing key points, right? So then if we look at some of the other kind of features, we already discussed kind of baseball and soccer fields, right? You know, discuss kind of the example of bathroom buildings, what we might want to suggest or ask around that. And then the drinking fountains, the same. The other one that, you know, kind of overlapping horticultural demonstration garden, planted areas, I think feels important to me to call out because just based on my observations, even just relative to the past couple of years, there seems to have been a noticeable drop off in, you know, some of the you know, just the maintenance and care taken of some of those areas, right? And so, you know, I'm not sure what to attribute that to exactly, but I think, you know, it's something that's worth pointing to and, you know, asking if we can make an effort that, you know, in some parks, those planted areas and gardens are, you know, kind of supposed to be very focal points, and when they're not being cared for, it's very noticeable as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We're even seeing that the Environmental Commission is seeing that over in the Rock Garden across from the Pollinator Garden. We're doing a lot of work in the Pollinator Garden, but it's kind of bare. It used to be so beautiful. You know, people used it as a real backdrop for photographs, and this last year it was kind of, you know, scraggly. It was clean, but it wasn't planted. So maybe just that, encouraging that. And that may be something that we can look for a grant for. Some, you know, for seeds or small plants to kind of do that in equally around all the parks. You know, to Josh's earlier point, like to make it balanced across the city.
And in addition to planting some, I guess, ornamental type plants, I think Zoltan and I spoke about perhaps planting some really hardy herbs there.
Yes.
You know, make the place smell better, but they're also pretty easy to take care of. Rosemary,
Yeah.
Thyme would be easy. Lavender would be easy.
Sage. We have huge sage and rosemary plants in Piscataway.
Mint would be pretty easy in certain areas where we're not worried about it being overrun. Because it can take over an area, but you know, stuff like that where, you know, the community, they could technically, you know, take some of the homes they wanted, but it also fills the space. Choosing plants like that, I think maybe would be beneficial. Zoltan, I say that.
Yeah, I'm just starting. We just received, but it's expensive, Sichuan pepper plants. You know, that's for the future, not right now. We just received 2 plants. So.
Yeah.
That's a good point, right? If you know, especially based on any feedback we get from the city, right? If they kind of are able to share if there are particular reasons for, you know, where there may have been less attention paid to those gardens in past years, right? Maybe, well, we need to adjust the kind of plantings that are happening so they're easier to maintain, right? What good is it
to maintain is figs, you know? So we just received 10 cuttings for Black Mission figs, you know? So.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, we can cut that to more years.
Are there any other items that people see that kind of jump out to folks based on the results that they think would be important to highlight in our report?
I think you did a really good job on this, Charles. Thank you for taking the time and the leadership on this.
Yeah, you're welcome. I thought it definitely made it easier to kind of see those trends when we looked at it like this, and I think it helped crystallize some of
Mhm.
our impressions.
Mhm. And I guess the only other thing I would think we want to just call attention to is the new parks that are, you know, on slated to come, to be redone. And, you know, an update on that, and really being appreciative that the city is putting effort and resources into the new parks and that new, um, self-guided tour, the technology that's underway. Um, I think there's a commitment to wanting the parks to be used, and we support that.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Mhm. Okay, do we feel good about sort of where we landed in this discussion? So what we do next, over the next 2 weeks, I'll try and kind of make an initial draft based on our conversation, uh, based on these results, share that with the commission for feedback, and particularly if folks, just general feedback, but also folks want to, make specific additions based on the parks they visited, and they want to call out um, particular recommendations or concerns, and hopefully we can still want to keep it something that's digestible for the mayor, that we can a couple pages of text and kind of this summary of results, right? I think we can do that and have it off to the mayor's office and the parks division in a few weeks, and with it an invitation for a follow-up conversation.
Sounds good.
All right. So,
Hey, Charles.
yes, that Josh B.
Yeah, Josh. Yeah, Josh Best here. Just a quick question. Is there, I know it was earlier brought up, or I think Zoltan mentioned about factoring in like park utilization in terms of the almost like as a weight, giving weight to certain parks over others. Just kind of clarifying, we're treating that not necessarily as factoring into this yet, but maybe eventually.
Well, I guess that's an open question, and I guess maybe the question might be what might we emphasize differently,
Yeah.
if we wanted to place more weight on utilization, right? So did you have something specific in mind around that?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was more just a question. Like, I agree with you that if the goal is, kind of getting this done sooner than later, then I don't necessarily see it as realistic. I just recall from the last meeting, maybe with the mayor, that there was a discussion of kind of one. I think I asked a question about if they had data that was based on utilization of parks, and then the other option would be to try to collect. You could do like from a GIS perspective, you could analyze like population density in the immediate surroundings, but both of those are obviously time intensive. So the other thing is just arbitrarily putting a list of saying, Bucklew Park and Joyce Kilmer, and maybe we could do an arbitrary categorization of which are the highest utilized and then lower. I'm not saying we should. I do think it can be a significant or a meaningful factor in this discussion in terms of prioritizing. I don't necessarily, when I look at the list that you have here, I don't necessarily think that it's inaccurate or misrepresentation in any sense. I was just more asking for clarification if we were trying to do that or not right now.
Yeah, I would. So I don't think we probably have, time or capacity to do a more in-depth kind of analysis of utilization. But I think what we could do is we just is just in how we frame the recommendations, right? If we want to draw attention to, I think Joyce Kilmer Park is maybe a good example of of the ones that are lower rated, right? Is definitely the largest and most heavily utilized of those, right? So maybe just
Yes.
by virtue of that, like, can we place special attention on that, right? I'd say is the maybe the counter argument to some degree would be that doesn't necessarily mean we're asking to ignore like the smaller pocket parks, because like Welton Street Park, for example, one reason it's maybe not getting much use right now is that it is not in very good shape, right? So even if you were thinking to go there, you're less likely to, just based on its condition. But I think the point about like, where's the most bang for your buck, is a good one, right? I think geographically, like around the city, based on the recommendations we kind of have consensus around, it represents a range of specific parks and a range of features that are common across different areas of the city. So I think in that sense we're not being too kind of narrow in our focus.
I guess the only other thing that just popped into my head, Charles, about follow-up would be an update on the playground equipment. If it's been ordered, when it will get done, because in the small pocket parks, that will make a very big impact because it's kind of the showpiece of that area. So it would be good to know if that's still on track and when. As the weather gets colder and the ground gets hard, it's going to be harder to do installation of playground equipment.
Absolutely. I think it's good to call that out in the correspondence, right? That this is one that's set to jump, right? Because we've worked with the city on this, and we hope it happens expeditiously. But we should, as soon as Dan Dominguez is back from his paternity leave, might try and follow up with an update on that. I mean, as not that long ago, maybe sometime during the early summer, I think the last I heard was that they still thought that might happen this fall. So it would be good to know for sure.
Okay, great.
All right. Well, that is the meat of our agenda, right? But we do our first, do we have any other park-related communications or reports that folks would like to share?
Nope, all good.
Okay. Well, then we can move into public comment. Any of our guests like to share today?
I would. I don't know what the particular process is for your turn, but this is Councilwoman Socorro Ludwig. Do you have a list, or may I just speak?
You are top of the list. Go
Well,
for
fantastic. Thank you. First, I wanted to thank all of you for your commitment, to doing community service and taking such good care of the parks, and it really makes a big difference with the city, and I do appreciate it. So thank you for that. Second, I think you all know we've been doing a lot of underground utility work. We've been ripping a lot of the streets up, and then along with that, we've been doing some sidewalk replacement. So with the project on Lewis Street at the corner of Lewis and Hamilton, Robert Witch contacted me because with the new sidewalk design, he has now a bigger area of grass between the sidewalk and the road that's adjacent to his property on the corner. He contacted me and he was wondering if he could do plantings there to try to keep people off the grass so it didn't just become an eyesore and run down and full of garbage. The way the project progressed, I suggested that we do a raised flower box there because that will completely keep people off of it. If not, the flowers will just get trampled. I spoke with engineering, planning, and the legal departments. We walked the site. We know what we need to do, what the restrictions are with the line sites. And then Robert also contacted a friend of his. Her name is Hannah Oppenheimer, and she's a horticulturalist. And so she developed a design plan for us along with a planting calendar. I have the cost analysis for the build out of the box and the plantings. And I was wondering if there was a unique opportunity to be able to partner with the Parks Commission to search for grant funding, as a beautification process in that area. And so that's what I'm coming to you with tonight. And I have all of the details that I just spoke about. I can email them to one of the board members and they can pass them along to the others if you would like that. And I would answer any questions if you don't understand where I'm coming from with this.
Oh, that's very cool and exciting. I know exactly the spot you're talking about, and that would be a that would be a real boon to have a nice, garden focal point there, planter focal point.
Yes, like I'm waiting for the director of planning is writing up an agreement because Robert has agreed to maintain the box itself so that there's no issues with that. If it gets damaged, he will be rebuilding it, and there has to be some sort of agreement because it's on the right of the way of the city. But like I said, we walked the sites and the cost that we got back, it was $1,300 for the build out of the box and $1,700 for the garden itself for the year for all of the materials with shipping. She has all the sources in there. So we have all of the information, certainly open to suggestions, but I just wanted to present it to everyone.
I think it's a great idea, Suzanne. Did he think about using volunteers or working with Rutgers at all, or is he going to use his own resources to do the planting and do the preparation?
No, he actually said that he has a whole host of volunteers, people that, he works with on a lot of other projects, people that patronize his business who are more than happy to do the work. So it's not going to come out of pocket for anything. The cost analysis that we have is strictly for materials, and he does want to do it. We want to get volunteers together to source all of that work.
Mm-hmm. I think it sounds great. One of the things that we've been talking about with the Environmental Commission is standards that we would love to see, or best practices for creating pollinator corridors where we have native plants and we have plants that attract pollinators, because that's such an important need right now. And we'd love to see even guidelines that would allow people in their own homes, out in their backyards, in front of their homes. I think this could be a great model for that and a start. I don't know what it looks like, but certainly when we see it, we can make some recommendations if that isn't in there for native plants and pollinator friendly plants.
Right, absolutely. I'm not that familiar with with each of the plants. The entire list is there, and it it shows even where the plantings will be when they bloom and everything. I'm happy to share that with you and open to suggestions. I do know we are capped at nothing can be above 3 foot just because it's on a corner and with that sight line. So there relatively lower lying plants.
Mhm.
I can tell you that much, and that's just the restriction that we have with the city for safety. But outside of that, open to anything. And so I didn't know, is there an opportunity to partner, work with you to make sure we do the right thing, stay in accord with your mission for what you're trying to create in these areas, and the potential for some sort of grant funding or a grant application that we would be able to apply for.
So one thing, Councilwoman, just to be aware of, this has been a kind of a point that we've deliberated on at different points over the years in the commission, but so the Parks and Gardens Commission doesn't have kind of organizational status to be able to pursue grants directly as a commission independent of the city. So we can, the position the kind of role we've most often played is when the city has applied for funding for a particular park project, right? We might provide a letter of support, right, indicating that we've discussed, we're aware of and supportive of a particular proposal. But we don't, I guess that's a little distinct from like the Environmental Commission, because the Environmental Commission, or maybe the Environmental Commission deals with the same thing, but environmental commissions are like, have a specific sort of statutory role in New Jersey, right? That's a little distinct. So might have a little more capacity to independently pursue funding available for environmental commissions. So we have never, as a Parks and Gardens Commission, applied for funding. We have, in a few cases, identified funding and encouraged the city to apply for it, right? So we could certainly, try to look for and keep an eye out for, for funding opportunities that might fit the bill here. I don't know if Denise or anyone wants to add anything to that.
Well, what I would say is that we did have a couple of examples with the dog park. We actually we identified funding sources, and we wrote the proposal, and the city submitted it. But most of the writing and the budgeting got done by volunteers from the Parks and Gardens Commission. I personally look at funding opportunities on a regular basis because of the nonprofits that I'm involved with. So I'm happy to keep my eyes open for something, and I'd be more than willing to help with writing and reaching out to the funders, if that would be helpful.
That would be, and even if, and I thank you for explaining all of that to me. First of all, I appreciate the process. If I can give you all of the material that I have, and it's a project that you'd still like to work on with us, that way we, like I said, we're going in the same direction. I would appreciate input, and then if you could give a recommendation saying that, if I go to the city to apply for certain funding for this, and I had the recommendation of the Parks Commission that we're working together on it, it may be helpful as well. It's going to be sourced either way. I mean, the funding is going to come either personally, but it was just, something that popped up in my mind, if it was something that, like I said, fit the mission. But I do appreciate the process of, if we could work on it together, I think it would be beneficial for all of us.
Absolutely.
Could you clarify the location again? I think I missed exactly the location where it was.
It's the corner of Lewis and Hamilton, right outside the Allen Witch.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this will be in the materials you'll share. But what's the exact footprint, the size of the area?
It's approximately 4 foot by 35 is what will be planted, or maybe 40, like 4 foot by 40. There are
Okay.
a couple signs there that they're working around, but the whole thing is in the drawing. So it would be that whole area from the driveway up into 3 feet before the sidewalk, just to keep a clear line with everything. That's what we had discussed when we walked the site, just through engineering and planning.
Suzanne,
I
is there a tree in that footprint already? Are there trees?
There is a tree that's down towards the end by the driveway. It's probably a couple feet in, and then there's a sign. So the design also incorporates both of those things in there.
Oh,
Sounds really
And I know
nice.
Robert wanted to do something really nice and, like dedicate the park and something that in conjunction with Rutgers and the neighborhood. He's been in the neighborhood a really long time. So, he wants to make it nice. He wants to keep it nice. And I think it's a really nice gesture on his part. And I think it would suit the neighborhood well, because we really don't have that many flowers or areas like that going on down there.
yeah, and I mean, it even occurs to me if this could be an interesting model that other business owners might look at and say, oh, maybe I'll approach the city about doing something similar, in the area outside my business, right, where it's feasible. That could be very cool to see that, inspire others to think about doing the same thing.
I
Is
think
this
it would.
currently,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Is this currently a concreted area, like a sidewalk, or is it a grass strip?
No, it's grass.
Gotcha.
It's grass. But I think it could be a good model as well. And to get, it would help people get more involved and more focused on their properties. And when you have something like that and you pay attention to it a little bit more and you take a little bit more pride in it, and if they start popping up and we can, make it a program, like a sustainable program that we can do throughout the city, I think it's a really wonderful idea.
Mhm, mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it to us.
Oh, of course, and thank you for all your help, Denise, too. I appreciate that. And whose email should I send this information to?
Yeah, if you have Denise's contact, Denise is also our secretary. So yeah.
Okay, I'll do that.
Yeah.
With us. Mhm.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, I'll forward all the material that I have to Denise. And if does anybody have any other questions for me on this at this point? Well, I'll forward it to her. Excuse me?
Yeah, sounds like a cool project and a great opportunity that hopefully can become a model. So definitely we'll look at that and see how we can help make it happen.
Excellent. I appreciate that. If we have any questions, once you get the material, let me know, and then we can keep in touch and, try to grow this into something that's special downtown.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Suzanne.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Any other public comments? All right.
Victoria, did you want to share anything that's going on in your organization that coordinates or overlaps with what we're doing?
Sorry, was that for me?
Yes.
Charles knows me pretty well, as we work closely with, as he works closely with Collab. Collab Arts right now is not working anything particularly with parks. We are getting a mural together with Charles, but as I'm newer to New Brunswick, I am excited to pop into different meetings and understand the landscape of what is happening. I'm also in charge of developing our documenters program, which will include people from the community coming to these meetings like this to be able to document and share out those notes.
Oh, that's interesting. Good.
Cool. let us know if you need any information from us, Victoria, as you plan to engage those documenters, but we'll be happy to have them at future meetings.
Thank you so much, and I definitely will let you guys know. I appreciate it.
Okay. All right. Well, I think barring any additional comments, thoughts, questions, are we ready to make a motion to adjourn?
I had a
Charlie,
quick
did you-
question.
Go ahead, Josh.
Go for it,
Sorry.
Josh.
Just since I was late, I wanted to know, Charles, you were mentioning about wrapping up, kind of getting the park assessment tool data summarized. Is there a timeline for that based on something specific, or is that just something you wanting to hopefully wrap up soon?
This hoping to wrap up soon, partially because we know that the city in the fall, starts actively engaging in budget conversations for the following year. So that's generally been our aim, to get recommendations from them at this time, around this time, so it doesn't kind of arrive too late to influence any budget considerations. And just sending this along while the assessments are still relatively fresh, right, within the last few months.
Yeah.
So primarily, for those reasons, my hope was maybe within 2 weeks to send out an initial draft to everyone, and then give a week or so for people to respond. So then, and once we incorporate that, then send by let's say before the end of the month to the city.
Okay, makes sense. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I'm good.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn.
A second.
I second.
Okay, all those in favor of adjourning? Aye. Okay, 7:43 adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great